All right, welcome to another episode of Flip the Mind Script. I'm Brandon.
I'm Jen. So what's our topic today?
Something about marriage, relationship.
I was kind of thinking, I was listening to another podcast and it was actually a YouTube channel, but they were like 5 ways to change your marriage today. And I kind of liked it because what they said, actually, it was pretty good advice. Like when the stuff they were saying, I'm like, I would agree. Now they'd been married for like 25 years, which I was like, well, clearly
then they know what
you know what you're talking about. And they genuinely seemed like a normal, happy couple, not like influencer, like we're going to fake it for the cameras and we've been married for 2 months and oh my gosh, we figured marriage out. But then, like experienced people, you're like, that's awful advice. Do not follow that.
Okay.
So, I'll start with mine because I have a few that I've already thought of. But then do you
Just
have any?
Well, we'll see.
Okay. So the first one we've talked about a couple of times. But that is when you're in a situation that is irritating you with your partner, rather than just jumping to like what they're doing, look at what your part is. That's one thing I would say to drastically start.
Take responsibility for yourself first.
Yes.
Look at yourself.
Yes. Especially if you're fighting a lot. Especially if like there is stuff that constantly comes up. Instead of you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, I would say the first thing is go, why is this a problem for me? Let's take the idea of like,
why does this annoy me?
Why does this annoy me?
Why does this bother me?
So I think there's a lot of things. Taking the example of, let's say, a woman, a wife needs help. And they're like, would you help me? Right? And let's say they'll say, in their mind, they're feeling very overwhelmed. And the thought is, would you do the dishes? Right? The husband says, yeah, sure. And then I think there's a lot of times where there is a disconnect because they're looking at the dishes, they're not getting done. They keep looking at the dishes, they're not getting done. Do you get what I'm saying?
Who's looking at the dishes?
Oh, sorry.
The one that asked.
Wife is looking at the dishes and they're still not being done. So
after they asked, will you do the dishes?
Yeah. So then she says, will you do the dishes? And the husband's like, yeah, I said I would do the dishes, right? And she's still looking and she's still looking. Now, every woman listening has had some version of that, right? And I'm sure every man listening has had some version of like, yeah, I said I would do it. Okay. Here is the disconnect. And this is where it's really important to look at what it is that you're truly asking, what it is that you're upset about, what is your part. So it's not using this specific example. It's not that they've asked you to do the dishes. They want you to do the dishes right now. The second they ask you, that's what they're asking for. Do the dishes right now. And then you could even take it a step further. I'm feeling overwhelmed. If you would just do this one thing for me, it would take a little bit of mental load off of my plate. Could you please just do that? Taking it another step further, if you could just alleviate this one thing right now as I'm needing it, that would show me that you love and you're listening to me, and I would feel connected to you and appreciated for you. Do you get the rabbit hole that like a lot of times, and this is not just women, men do it too in other ways, but there's a rabbit hole. But the only thing that's spoken is, would you do the dishes? And the only thing that's spoken back is, yeah. That there's a huge disconnect between will you do the dishes and I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling stressed. I need this thing taken off of my plate right this second, not in 5 minutes, not in a half an hour, whatever it is you're doing right this second.
So the guy's in watching a show or whatever, And then the woman comes back half an hour later and the dishes aren't even started or being worked on, and she gets upset. The guy starts, "Why didn't you do the dishes?" What do you mean? My show's almost over. You knew I was watching whatever, the game. I don't know. And so then it starts a fight.
The thing is
so
that
who's at fault, Jen?
Well, nobody's at fault.
Oh, really?
Nobody's at fault because the woman is telling her
Is always right. Is that what you were going to say? The woman is always right?
No,
the woman is never right. You remember that, men.
That's what I'm going to start the podcast with. Okay. Nobody's right and nobody's wrong.
Nobody needs to be right or wrong.
Yeah, nobody's.
The woman is always wrong.
Do you want this podcast to fail? Nobody's right and nobody's wrong. It's that you're not being accurate in what it is that you're wanting. That's why it's so important to look inward and say, what is it that I'm actually asking?
Yes.
What is it that I'm?
So that's a responsibility for not being clear on asking whoever it is what you're wanting.
Right. So let's just jump to the end. And now you have the husband and wife in a fight, right? If you're now in a fight, the wife should now say, okay, what is it? Clearly, there is a miscommunication. What is it that I was really wanting? Number one, why did it frustrate me that he didn't jump up and do it when he said he would do it? Like, what is that? What is that? Like, why did I need it done that second? Why did it disappoint me that he didn't do it that second? Why did it disappoint me? And then I'm sure there's that you always do this kind of mentality going on sometimes in the wife's head, right? Like, now it's this whole conversation in her head, and it's her responsibility to say, why did listing all the things, why am I feeling frustrated? Why am I feeling upset? No,
the woman is never right. You remember that, men.
Why am I getting mad? Right? Why all of these things? Why did I expect a very specific outcome? Right?
Okay.
And then there's also other things. I'm sure that if the guy is upset, it's now his responsibility to do the same thing if he's upset at his wife. Whoever's upset or whoever is having an issue with the situation, instead of being like, you're not doing the dishes, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not blah, 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 all these things, why does that upset you? Okay, it's that kind of thing. Let's say your wife leaves the gas tank on empty all the time and it makes you livid. Why? Why don't you just have a conversation? What about that is making you upset? I don't know. I'm trying to think of a guy's version.
That's probably a good version. I mean, a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She clearly doesn't have a problem with it. And she's just like, my husband will fill my gas tank. And
well, it's the man's job to fill the gas up, right?
Is it?
I'm saying, isn't that like a role that could be in society? It's the woman's job to wash the dishes. It's whatever.
Well, I think that's interesting and can bring us to the second one, which is very clearly defined roles or expectations. Maybe not roles, expectations.
Well, you grow up, two people growing up in a different way, different household, different expectations, different beliefs. Then you're coming together and you're bringing that into one. That can be a cause for a lot of arguments. You don't recognize and realize what is happening.
Yeah. And I would also say that having that communication of what it is you're expecting could be really eye-opening. If there's a problem like you're not meshing very well, things are not flowing very well, it's very likely that each of you could have an expectation and the other person's completely unaware of it. If somebody were to come to you today and say, my marriage is on the rocks, like we're really close to divorce, like what's something I can do to change it right now?
So it's assuming they want to stay together.
Yeah.
That is a very broad question, because issues can be, or marriages and relationships are so unique and different. However, I know there are things that everyone can benefit from.
Well, there's universal, I think the thing is, there's universal truths in marriage, like communication. It doesn't matter race, doesn't matter sexuality, it doesn't matter
Location, rich, poor.
Communication, you gotta figure that out in any relationship, whether it's spouse and
So, okay, that's a good point. I know I always say this, but it really does come down to communication. Fine, that's easy to say. What does that mean? What does communication look like?
right, which
So-
that's kind of the thing why I'm like, okay, so communication's a broad one,
So it is. It's all communication.
but
So
like what would
now
be
break
one
it down.
thing
Right.
if somebody, like, we're on the verge of divorce?
So a question you can ask the spouse. What is bothering you? What are you so upset about? Like, not in an angry, antagonistic way, but in I can clearly see you're upset. What is really bothering you? And let them talk. I know we've probably discussed that or said that before, but that is a skill, something you need to learn, is keep your mouth shut sometimes and let them talk. And no matter how much you want to interject, how much you want to say, how much they could be blaming you, they might need to work through the highs and lows and blaming you and then like being sad and then whatever. They got to get to whatever it is they're trying to get to. You have to let them. You got to let them take that emotional journey. Let the anger fly. Let them just vent. And then they'll get to a point where they realize, oh, wait, this is what it is. And then you taking that journey with them, you might be like, agree with them. Yeah, I am a jerk. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well,
who knows what the reasoning is, but you don't know. You don't know what's at the end of the road if you don't take the journey.
I think what you said is really important, that they might need to vent, they might need to blame you, and it's really important at that time to just sit and listen and just let them work through it. It's really, really hard to talk to somebody logically when their really heightened emotions they're just
So they're not thinking straight.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of built up pressure and emotion and all that just needs to be vented.
I think that's kind of the next one. You need to find a good routine and schedule and flow. I don't really know what else to call it, for all of the needs that a relationship needs. For instance, communication. If you're in such a moving lifestyle that you don't have date night or times to talk, or like you are basically roommates, you are never going to figure anything out. And that is just going to build pressure and build pressure and build pressure.
And just, you're going to be like separating from each other more and more. The more that goes on, the more time, the more circumstances that happen, you're just going to keep going further and further apart.
So Jordan Peterson said this thing, and I thought this was fascinating.
Okay.
That a couple needs, I might say this totally wrong, but like a couple just to keep their life moving forward. Like, this is not having a good relationship. This is just like talking about the kids, talking about the household, talking about finances, talking about like the schedule, who's doing what. It's like just that takes an hour and a half every week just to keep your lives
I think I remember you saying something about that
like
before.
connected, right? Just like, hey,
That sounds about right. Especially when, you've got kids, things are happening, like work, who knows? Like going in different directions, all this stuff going on.
So that's not even including like, hey, let's hang out because I like hanging out with you. So that doesn't even include like date night. That
it kind of goes to the way, I know we've discussed this before with ourselves anyway, but you almost have to think of your marriage as like running a business. Maybe people don't like that idea, but companies give all this time and energy and focus and preparation and planning to their business. And some of them still fail.
Yeah.
And we don't think to give any planning at all to the thing that's the most important, one of the most important things in your life, your marriage, your relationship with your spouse.
I totally agree. In fact, I would say that one of the things that's been very successful is I think both of us kind of treat our marriage kind of like we're in CEO and CFO and CO, like whatever the titles are. And we have councils, we have meetings between us.
That's one thing I was going to say. We have couples council once a week. And we try to make sure we're doing that consistently. The more consistent we are with that, the better things run. And what does that look like? Couples council. We sit down and we discuss what's happening in the week with the kids, with work. When am I going to be gone? What are you doing? What's happening? Do you need me for anything? That was another one. Before we started doing that, you would need help with stuff. I wouldn't even know it. But then when we started having our couples council, you would say, oh, well, I really need you on this day or sometime this week. The day doesn't matter, but I need this done.
You can call it whatever you want. Like some people call it board meetings. We call it family council, spousal council. But we do a spousal council where it's just the two of us once a week. We do a family council where it involves all the kids and us. And then I would say the ideal would be on top of that, having like a date night once a week. Like something.
A hangout time. I don't like the word date, the phrase date night, I've realized, because that just puts a thought in your head that we need to go on a date and go out to dinner and go to the movies. No, you need to figure out what works for you. I'm not saying don't do that. I mean, maybe date night is taking a ride in your helicopter. Maybe date night is smashing cockroaches together.
That's love right there. Well, okay, it's not so much. I don't want to get hung up on the words or the verbiage.
No, I know. I wanted to clear that up. Because
you need time to plan, just you and your spouse. Then you need time to plan with the whole family so everybody's on the same page. Then you need time to have fun together. And then I would say you need family time to have fun together. Like it's not doing all of that is what keeps all the needs that everybody has, like connection and variety and significance. It just covers everything.
Yes, that's actually a really good point. I would say before we started family council, which is basically we just go sit at the kitchen table. Jen usually has like a notebook and she'll write down stuff that happened for the week. And the kids will tell her what they want to put in it. And they love going back and reading what happened a year ago or whatever. I did not realize how much they like being involved in the happenings of the family and decisions that are being made and what's happening with when are we going on vacation or who knows what. I did not realize that, but that is a really good point. Okay, having a good marriage, a happy relationship. Well, part of that, assuming you have kids, it really is a part of having a good relationship, a good marriage. Because if your kids are not feeling heard and don't feel like they're a part of anything, decision making, or don't know what's going on, they're going to be stressed. If they're stressed, they're less likely to help you when you're trying to get things cleaned up in the house, when you're trying to get whatever accomplished. It really makes a difference. That is a really good point, that our relationship is directly affected by the children.
Part of that is, I would even say, in certain seasons of life, even having, I don't want to say a schedule, but like a flow of like your sex life, even that, because I get it when you're first married.
That might need to be scheduled.
You're just doing it all the time. Like especially if you don't have kids.
Oh, right.
There's a whole lot not interrupting that. But when your life gets going, that easily can be interrupted, just like other things get interrupted. And so if you start to, if you're not planning on that, there's certain seasons of life that are just going to take over, and that will easily fall to the wayside.
If you don't plan on it not happening.
Well, in certain seasons, yeah.
If your schedule gets busy enough and you're not planning on it, it's most likely not going to happen.
Yeah. And it's not always babies and toddlers. Sometimes people will say, oh, babies and toddlers, that affects it. That's not always the case. Sometimes, I mean, I've even noticed like our older kids, sometimes because their schedule is so insane, my schedule is so insane, your schedule's at a whole other level, and we're not even like we are on two different schedules. That it's just like, oh, you're getting home, bye. hope I see you in a couple of days, kind of thing. And so with the family council, and maybe this is with family council, because if you're doing family council and you're constantly doing like spouse council, that will help you to assess when life changes, because life is going to constantly be changing. And it's one thing to have that span between, let's say, it's just the two of you and kids. That's a whole type of lifestyle. Then when you have newborns, or not even newborn, you have pregnancy, that's an entire different type of lifestyle.
Then when you actually have a little person running around and you have to take care of it, just the first time you have a child, that's overwhelming. You don't know what's happening. Your whole world is turned upside down. And then you can't even imagine having another one. But then you get that under control. And then you have another one. You're like, wait, two? Oh, okay. Well, we did this kind of once, so let's do it again. But now, you can, high five on your way to the one kid and the other one's sick. Now you have three. Well,
it's
now where's the other one? I don't know.
It's done at 3. You might as well have like 15. If you have 3, have 15. You're fine. It's after 3.
No more tag team. At 3, tag teams are over.
Yeah. You're outnumbered. There's no hope. No, but the having family council, having spousal council, when things shift, and they're going to shift. And I think one of I wish I would have known, I wish I would have been prepared to plan for the shifts. Like you think of having kids.
When shift hits the fan, you're not always prepared for it.
True. And maybe it's not even kids. Maybe it's a new job. It's moving. Like us being in the military, we moved so many times. And I'm looking back, I never gave myself the grace or the leniency to recognize how long it takes me to get settled in a new place. And I know some people love a new experience and they love new stuff and they love, this is a whole new thing and it's very exciting and that's awesome. I've really recently, I look back and I recognize it took me a really long time to become at ease in a new place. And I don't think that's wrong. I just never gave myself the grace or the leniency because I was really hard on myself. Like, what is wrong with me?
You hadn't had the opportunity because we moved so often, changing address, registration, insurance, new address changes on everything. I mean, You don't realize how many things you are affected when not just moving down the street, that's a certain shift, but then changing states again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Like it is a pain and it takes a while to resettle. And that is draining on getting things accomplished in life.
Yeah. So whether you're moving, like changing jobs, adding kids,
Every change,
death, like
every
death of
shift
somebody.
in your life makes a disruptant. Every shift disrupts things in your life.
Yeah.
You need to account for that. Don't discredit. Don't. If you're like so tired and worn out, look at all the shift in your life that has happened. Okay, you got married. You had a child. You went through bankruptcy. You've moved. You got a new job. I mean, it doesn't matter. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And then just put all those things together all at once. No wonder you're frazzled and you're stressed out. It's okay.
Yeah, but if you're constantly having those if you're constantly talking,
it can only take you by surprise so much. Like you've got at least somewhat of a handle on it.
Yeah.
Because you've been controlling things. You've been planning so that when unplanned stuff comes, you can absorb it easier.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between life happening for you rather than life happening to you. If you're kind of on this constant page together of we're always going to talk, we're always going to communicate, we're always going to like figure it out together, we're always going to come together. What do you need? What do I need? What's happening this week? What's going on? And you kind of create that habit. Then eventually when things happen that are unexpected, you're going to automatically know what your partner needs. And if you miss a couple of times, or if there's a time frame in your life where you aren't really connecting, you're going to know how to get back to that faster.
Yes.
You're going to know rather than starting at square one being like, well, she says she needs help. I don't even know how to help her. But if you're constantly coming together, you're going to be like, okay, I know she's really overwhelmed right now.
And when she gets overwhelmed, this is what happens.
This is what happens. I'm just going to jump the gun. You know what? I'm just going to do the dishes because I know that takes a mental load off of her. I know that. For me, I do not mind doing the dishes. There's very few times, if you were to just do the dishes, I'd be appreciative, but I don't know that that would take a whole lot of mental load off of me. But there's other things that I'm like, I've come in and you're like, I just did that. And I'm like, you so much. And that's not to say you can't do the dishes. I always appreciate when you help. But there's certain like it's knowing those certain things that like you know are going to take that mental load off of somebody.
Right. But that's something where you sit down for family counsel or spousal counsel, whatever. And I now know that these things will help you because you've brought it up and we've discussed it and it's come up multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's not a shocker and it does help with communication and everything. I think the biggest takeaway today is having counsels with your spouse, with your children, with family.
Is there any others that you can think of that are just?
There are always a lot of others. I would say that's the biggest. That's not the biggest. That's a very important one. That will help ease the chaos. And you just have to start it. Don't worry about, oh, I don't know what to do. Just sit down and talk about the week. Start there. What's coming up? What happened last week? What's happening the next week? You can talk even further out and be like, okay, well, what kind of plans do we have for the next month? Doesn't matter. Just start with, hey, what's happening this week?
Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Another one in the books.
Hope you learned something.
Thanks for listening. And
go have a family council. I'm really interested to hear how that goes.
Yeah.
Your kids might look at you like you're crazy and not know what you're even talking about.
That's okay.
That's okay. Just move forward with it. They'll love it. Trust me.
It doesn't matter if your first family council is a fight. You did it.
That's right. All right.
That's it.
That's it. Good luck.